The story begins as we learn about the Tower of God, where anyone who reaches the top will have their wish granted. We see a girl named Rachel as she runs away, but she's stopped by her friend Bam, who asks her where she's going. So she explains she's going to climb the tower to see the stars, and she tells him to forget about her. He refuses to let her go, but she starts glowing and starts to vanish as the door to the tower opens. Bam thinks he's never going to see her again when he suddenly hears a voice telling him that the answer can be found at the top of the tower. The door opens once again, and a giant hand grabs onto him. Bam wakes up in a room and is confused by his surroundings, but he suddenly hears the voice again, telling him all visitors are welcome. A mysterious creature named Keaton appears and reveals that he's the caretaker of the tower. He calls Bam by his name, which surprises him, and he asks Keaton about Rachel, but he explains that all his questions will be answered once he reaches the top of the tower. Keaton wonders if Bam wants to take the test to enter the tower, and he uses his stuff to take them in front of a cage, which has a monster trapped inside. He tells Bam that for him to pass the test, he has to enter the cage and break the black sphere in the middle. He warns him the tower is dangerous, but Bam rushes towards the monster. As he's about to enter the cage, he's stopped by a girl named Yuri, and she starts speaking in a foreign language. Her companion Evan arrives, and tells Yuri he can't understand them, so he takes out a ball and a light surrounds Bam, who realizes that he can now communicate with them. The light turns into a floating ball called a pocket, and Evan tells Bam it's not only a translator, but also their lifeline in a tower. He asks Bam to turn toward the pocket and say invisible mode, so he gives it a go, and the ball disappears. Bam is shocked, and Evan says it will return to its original form if he says visible mode, but Yuri sees his reaction and realizes he's an irregular. He has no idea what she's talking about, so she explains that an irregular is an outsider who entered the tower by opening the gates on their own, but she mentions he looks weak for an outsider. Evan worries about getting involved with an irregular, but Yuri asks him if he cares if Bam gets eaten by the monster. Keaton interrupts them, mentioning that even if she's the princess of Zod, if the king finds out about what they're doing, they will be executed, but Yuri mentions the king will only find out if he tells on them. She wonders why he has given Bam such a difficult test, because even people on the 20th floor have difficulty dealing with this monster. She asks him if he thinks Bam has a hidden power and is going to transform, but she doesn't believe he's anything special, except for being handsome. She requests Keaton to lower the difficulty of the test, but he refuses, and Bam believes he can clear the trial. She thinks he's going to die, so Keaton proposes she give him her Black March if she wants to help him. The Black March depends on the user, so it could just be a lump of lead, or a blade capable of cutting through anything. Evan is against this idea, because it's a weapon only for a princess of Zod, but she decides to lend it to him. She takes out the sword, and gives it to Bam, and even though he's hesitant to take it, she convinces him to accept it. He promises to return it after completing the test, but she tells him to focus on staying alive. Bam enters the cage, but the monster rises into the air and is about to attack him, so Yuri tries to interfere, but Keaton stops her, because he will fail the test if she helps him. But the monster eats Bam, which makes Yuri push Keaton away, but this time Evan stops her. He reveals there's no way to avoid the monster, so Bam did the right thing by jumping into its mouth and attacking from inside. The monster spits him out, and Yuri gets angry at Evan, because he didn't tell Bam the path to pass the test. But he explains that even if someone knows the answer, not many would let themselves get eaten. Bam walks up to the black ball and hits it with his sword, but everyone's shocked, because it doesn't break, and Keaton says he can't tell them why, but mentions the real test hasn't even begun. Bam remembers his memories with Rachel and keeps stabbing the ball, but it doesn't break. The monster gets up again, and it rushes towards him, as Evan yells at him to speak to the sword, so he asks it to lend him its power. A light suddenly comes out of it, pushing the monster away, and a woman appears in front of Bam, asking him if he wants power to climb the tower. But he says he only cares about seeing Rachel again. She calls him boring, but decides to help him this time, because she finds him cute. Yuri mentions how the sword never lends its power to her, and realizes it was because it prefers men. The ball breaks, and Bam disappears into thin air, as Keaton reveals that he has ascended to the next floor. Evan starts panicking, because he took the Black March with him, but Yuri calms him down, saying they're going to follow him to retrieve the sword. He mentions that they're forbidden from entering the testing area for candidates, but Yuri thinks it's boring to follow the rules. Bam wakes up on the second floor, where a black box announces there are 400 regulars on this floor, and to clear this level, the number of people has to drop to 200 within the time limit. As the test begins, Bam is attacked by a warrior, who manages to pin him down, but he gets shot by an archer, who in turn is killed by a sniper. Bam knows he needs to survive, so he gets ready to attack an enemy in front of him, but a boy named Kun appears, telling him his attack won't work. Bam points his sword at Kun, but he warns him about another enemy behind him. Kun teases the enemy by calling him a talking alligator, which makes him angry, and he introduces himself as Rak. He tells Kun he has no interest in him, and just wants to hunt Bam so he can become stronger. But Kun thinks he's just another person allowing himself to be controlled, because he didn't question the higher-ups when they told everyone to kill 200 people. Rak tries to hit him, but he easily dodges his attack, and thinks that maybe what he said was too difficult for him to understand. He says goodbye to Bam, since he needs to find allies who he can climb the tower with. But as he's about to leave, Bam's weapon catches his attention, so he helps him by tripping Rak and making him believe they're running away. He goes after them, but in reality, they're just hiding behind the other creature. Kun asks Bam where he got the Black March, because it's a weapon granted to the princess chosen by Zahad, the king of the tower. So Bam reveals that Yuri gave it to him, and he's looking for someone, so Kun realizes he isn't a regular. Bam follows Kun, and they go to a safe location, where they see on their pocket that 268 regulars are remaining. Kun wonders if Bam has killed a regular before, but he mentions he doesn't remember his past, except for the things Rachel taught him. Kun wonders if she's his girlfriend, but Bam says he belongs to her, so he has to climb the tower to see her. Kun thinks Rachel is his rule, but he has no idea what this means. Kun asks him to become his ally, and reveals that after hearing the rules of this floor, he decided not to kill anyone, but instead find allies among the 200 that survive. Rak suddenly appears behind them, and tries to attack them, when an announcement is made that the limit of 200 has been reached, and anyone who continues to fight will fail the test. Everyone is told to find 2 allies within 5 minutes, and they will pass the test if they're touching their allies when the time ends. Kun thinks they have to ally with Rak, but he's still trying to fight them, so they run away from him, wondering if he understood the rules, but he explains that he doesn't want to become allies with his prey. Kun sees he has no other choice, so he prepares to kill him and find another ally, but Bam reminds Rak that he wants to hunt him, so they should be the ones to fight. Rak agrees, but Bam throws away his weapon and tells Rak to kill him. But he refuses to attack until Bam uses his weapon, and he doesn't want to pick it up, so Rak absolutely loses it. Kun invites Rak to join them in climbing the tower, saying he will find stronger opponents there, but Rak refuses, and he attacks Kun. The time is about to end, so Kun clings to Rak, and Bam follows his lead, allowing them to pass the test. We see the regulars gathered together, and Kun sees that 120 people passed the test. On the other hand, Rak is still trying to get Bam to fight him, but Kun mentions that if Bam reveals his weapon in front of everyone, they will hunt him down. Kun explains that it will be better for Rak to fight him when he gets stronger, and Rak thinks he's trying to fool him, but his stomach starts growling, so Kun gives him a candy bar. Meanwhile, 2 regulars start arguing with each other, when they're stopped by the test administrator named Lero, who mentions that fighting is forbidden in this place. So they immediately stop fighting, and realize he's a ranker, but Bam has no idea what this means, so Kun explains that a ranker is a person who has made it to the top of the tower. Lero mentions that too many people have passed the test, so a few of them have to be eliminated. He shoots water out from his hands, and he pushes everyone back with a wall. He calls it Shinsu, saying it's the source of the tower's power, and he explains that the teams that make it through the wall will pass the test. Kun thinks Rak will be able to pass through the wall, but he thinks Bam might struggle. But everyone is surprised that he's already on the other side of the wall. He didn't get pushed back like the others, and offers to go to the other side, but Lero says he passed the test, since he considers luck to be the most important factor in climbing the tower. The others try to get past the wall, and to pass the time, Lero makes a bet with Bam on which person will get through the wall first, with the winner getting to ask any questions they want. They look around, and end up selecting the same person, but Lero still agrees to answer his questions, because it's still impressive to get a tie with a ranker. Bam wonders if Lero has seen Rachel, but he hasn't, so Bam asks him about the irregulars, and he says they're the people who don't follow the rules of the tower. He reveals that the tower consists of 3 sections. The first is the outer tower, which is a residential district. The other section is the inner tower, where they are currently located, and the last part is the middle area, which connects the two sections. Most people spend their lives in the outer tower, but a few of them are chosen by Hedon and given permission to climb the inner tower. Bam wonders if this means everyone is born and raised in the tower, which makes Lero surprised, since this is supposed to be obvious, but this makes Bam wonder if he and Rachel are the only ones from another world. Lero mentions the regulars that have entered the tower are usually incredibly strong, but their conversation is interrupted when one of the regulars starts making a scene. He explains that he shouldn't have to fail this test, since he is strong, and can even kill a ranker. Lero goes through the wall, and covers the regular in Shinsu, telling him it can grant him unlimited power if he can endure it. He reveals they will have to face this level of Shinsu every day on the 30th floor, which surprises the regular, and when Lero sets him free, he falls to his knees. Rak and Kun also go through the wall, and even though Kun's bag gets stuck, he manages to make it through. Lero wishes Bam luck, but warns him not to get too close to Kun. Bam looks at the sky, and calls it a ceiling, so Rak bursts out laughing, as Kun tells him it's the sky. He recalls the time Rachel told him that at night, the sky is filled with stars, but Kun reveals this is only an imitation created by using Shinsu, and he doesn't know if the real sky even exists. He asks Bam if he wants to see the stars, but he mentions he was curious about it, because Rachel entered the tower to see them. Kun feels something's off, wondering why Rachel left to climb the tower alone after taking care of him for so long, but Bam says there's nothing wrong with her. The next test begins, and they hear a scream, which makes them think the next trial is going to be dangerous. The teams keep entering the testing area, but Kun and Bam are worried, because the tests are ending quickly. A regular offers to give them a hint, but Kun is skeptical about how he knows this, because they have no clues. But the regular mentions time is the main clue, and reveals the teams that haven't screened so far have passed the test within 5 minutes, which means they also have to pass it within this time. Bam thanks the regular, but Kun believes he's only trying to use them to test his theory. The regular says being too curious can be harmful, but he mentions how Kun can't help himself after the betrayal he suffered. So he becomes angry, and pins down the regular, threatening to kill him, but he decides to restrain himself. Bam and the others enter the testing area, where they see a clock, so Bam believes the regular was right, but Kun wants him to forget what he said. The test director named Yuan reveals that to pass the test, they have to open the correct door, but they only have one chance, and if they take longer than 10 minutes, the test will be forcefully terminated. Kun asks for more clues before the test starts, but Yuan says he has given them all the clues, which makes Bam think this is a test of luck. The test makes Rak lose his mind, since he doesn't like to think, and Bam tries to calm him down. Kun maintains his composure, and tries to find clues in the room to find the correct door. Yuan thinks that someone who can use his head has finally arrived, but he believes this test can't be passed by just using one's brain. Kun is confused as to why there's a clock in the room, because they can check the time on their pockets, which makes him wonder about the hint the regular gave them. He starts remembering his past, when there were rumors about him, that he and his half-sister Maria were lovers. His other sister was supposed to be chosen as a princess of Zod, but instead, Maria was selected because he helped her, and the moment she was chosen, Kun was abandoned, and his whole family was exiled. As he tries to calm himself down, Rak opens a door on instinct, and they end up passing the test. Yuan reveals that they just had to open any door within 5 minutes, but Kun is confused by what this test has evaluated. Yuan realizes the princess's betrayal has left deep wounds in Kun, so he can't trust anything, and isn't able to do anything with certainty. He doesn't think any of this matters, but Yuan mentions the world won't wait for him to be certain, so he needs companions who will open doors without hesitation. We learn that the regular who gave the hint to Kun and Bam was instructed by Yuan, because he wanted to know if this would help or hinder them. On the other hand, Yuan questions a test administrator named Quant, wondering if he did a proper job administering the tests, because only 3 people passed in his trial, so he reveals that he gave them the first and second tests simultaneously, as an untimed survival match. Yuan is surprised by how the 3 people who passed killed the other regulars in 30 minutes, which makes him wonder if there was an irregular or a princess among them. He mentions if the higher-ups learn of this, they both will be executed, but he decides to help Quant, and makes a call to Lero. Meanwhile, Bam struggles to buy a drink for Rak, so another regular named Lisu buys it for him, and he also introduces his teammates Onik and Hots. He meets with Kun and Rak, and mentions he feels sympathy for Bam, and is also inspired by him, because they both look like ordinary people. Liro arrives, and reveals that everyone has been given an opportunity to participate in a bonus test, but Lisu mentions how taking more tests isn't good news for them. Liro notes this test is voluntary, but anyone who passes it will be considered to have passed all the other tests, and will be given permission to continue climbing the tower, which makes everyone participate in it. Liro explains that 5 teams will simultaneously participate in a 5-minute game, where they will try to steal each other's crown, and the game will be split into 5 rounds. One member of the team will wear the crown, and stay seated until the end of the game, and if they're able to defend it until the round ends, the other 4 teams will be eliminated. New teams will enter the game during the second round, and the moment the person wearing the crown leaves the chair, the game will end. This will result in 5 new teams entering the game, and the team with the crown at the end of the final round will win. This means winning in the early round only hurts your chances, but if a team takes too long to participate, the game might end without them even getting an opportunity to play. He mentions a team from another testing area will also be participating in this game, and Rak can sense that they're extremely powerful. The first round is about to begin, and everyone is told that if they want to participate, they have to press the buzzers in their waiting room before Liro counts to 5. Lisu and his teammates decide to participate in the first round, and are opposed by only one team. Anik tells her teammates to stand back, since she alone is enough for their opponents, because she considers them weak. She uses her extending weapon to attack them, and even when one of them punches her head on, it doesn't affect her, and he ends up hurting himself. They realize they have no chance of defeating her, so they try to get the crown instead, but she stops all of them. Lisu tells her to give him the crown, because if she and Hots protect him, there's no way they will lose. But she wears it herself, and assures them she won't lose it. The next round is about to begin, and Ban is shocked when he sees a girl on opposing team, thinking she's Rachel. Lisu tries to get Anik to give him the crown, because he's the weakest member, but Liro reveals that once she sits on the throne, she can't leave, or it will result in that loss. Lisu is shocked, since they weren't told about this, but Liro mentions a detailed explanation of the rules was posted in the waiting room. The sign-up time for the next round begins, and Rak prepares to press the buzzer, but he's stopped by Kun, so he demands 10 chocolate bars for him not to press it. 2 teams decide to play this round, and Lisu notes how one of the teams has a sleeping member, but they say they don't need him to defeat someone as lame as him. The other team starts to attack, and Hots throws his sword into the air, and uses his other sword to blow them away. One of them tries to stop Hots' movement, but he cuts through his knife, as the other member tries to use this opportunity to attack, but he stops because of the other sword. On the other hand, Lisu is holding his own against the other team, but he's worried about their member who is sleeping. While he's distracted, one of them attacks him with her knife, and as he steps back, the other member grabs him. He thinks it's the end for him, but Hot saves him, since he has already defeated the other team. Rak wonders why Kun stopped him from pressing the button, so he explains how he would have participated in this round under normal conditions. We learn that the sleeping boy is named Lore, and he told his team to press the buzzer, and he and Kun explained the same thing to their teams, saying the team with the crown will have a disadvantage till the end of the second or third round. But as the game progresses, the number of participants will increase, so no matter how much they fight the team on the throne, they will be interrupted by other teams. In the worst-case scenario, another team will steal the crown, so instead of stopping other teams, the best option is to sit on the throne themselves. Rak believes they should have fought this round, but Ban notes they didn't, because Anik is the one on the throne. Lore's teammates told him they can't take the crown from Anik, but he assured them that he can do it, if they lure Hots and Lisu away from her. We return to the fight, as Lore wakes up, and shoots a massive Shinsu blast at Anik. She dodges his attack, and Lore's team members follow up, trying to knock her off the throne, but she manages to stay on it. Lisu and Hots try to help her, but Lore launches another blast, and she dodges it again. He advises her to give up, since he can attack the throne from anywhere, but she gets angry, and uses her weapon to attack everyone. She notes that she can also kill all of them from the throne, but Liro is disappointed that she gave in to her emotions. In the waiting room, Bam's weapon starts acting up, which is noticed by Anik, so she retracts her weapon. Lore's teammates use this opportunity to rescue him, and he reminds them if they go into the waiting room, they will be disqualified, but they think it's better than dying in a bonus test. Anik breaks into Bam's waiting room, and wonders why he has the Black March. She realizes he is struggling to control it, so she says he isn't worthy of it, and wants him to give it to her. Lisu is confused why she got them disqualified for just a sword, but she reveals that it's one of 13 from the month series, which are only given to the princesses of Zaad. Hots notes that it also smells like Onyx's weapon, so she reveals that she's a princess of Zaad. She wants Bam to give her the Black March, but he refuses, since he needs to return it to Yuri. Onyx prepares to attack, but is stopped by Liro, who wants them to go to their waiting room, since they have been disqualified. Onyx proposes a bet for the sword, saying that if they win the game, she will give him her weapon. Bam is against the bet, but Onyx mentions she's planning to kill him after the game and take the sword, so it's in his best interest to accept the bet. She says their chances of winning are low, which makes Rak and Kun angry, and they prepare to enter the game. As Onyx returns to the waiting room, a girl from another team whispers something to her, making her mad, but Hot stops her, since he doesn't want any more trouble. Kun thinks Bam is amazing, because he didn't give the Black March to Onyx, but he mentions how Rachel told him never to betray anyone. Bam calls himself useless and weak, but Kun believes this is what makes him special, because even though he's weak, he's still kept his promise when his life was on the line. The next round begins, and several teams come out, since this is their best opportunity to get on the throne. They all try to get the crown, but Kun gets hold of it in the blink of an eye, and instead of wearing it, he decides to keep it in his bag, saying he will give it to anyone who can defeat him. Everyone starts attacking him, and even though he manages to block all their attacks using his bag, he throws the crown away. As everyone is fighting for it, Ban sits on the throne, and Kun takes out the real crown, revealing that the one he threw away was a fake. Kun opens his bag, and countless crowns fall out, which makes everyone realize that the bag can create copies. All the other teams decide to work together, since they find his trick humiliating. They rush toward the throne, but Rak stops their attack, and throws his spear towards them, blowing them all away. The team from the other testing area wonders if they should enter the next round, but they decide to wait. Rak mentions how Kun wanted to show off his bag, but he says he only wanted to show his strength in front of Onyx. The fourth round begins, and there are 3 teams that enter, but Kun tells Rak not to fight them, because they should conserve their strength for the final round. This confuses Bam and Rak, because the teams are planning on working together against them, but one of the teams suddenly starts attacking the others. Bam is surprised how Kun knew this would happen, and he reveals that during the first test, he helped them by carrying them in his bag. He notes that meeting Rak and Bam was unexpected, because the 3 regulars inside his bag were enough to form a team. After the third test, he let them out of the bag, and explained the situation, and tying up his hair with a bandana was the signal for them to help him. Rak is disappointed he didn't get a chance to fight, but Kun gives him a chocolate bar, and assures him he can go crazy in the last round. Kun says he didn't want to use his allies this early, but they must win this game, because he wants to climb the tower with them. Kun's allies defeat the other 2 teams, and proceed to disqualify themselves, which marks the end of the 4th round. The last round begins, and Kun is worried about the team from the other testing area, because he doesn't know how strong they are. As the round begins, a girl named Warun quickly defeats 2 teams, so Kun asks Rak to deal with her. She attacks him with her staff, and even though he blocks her attacks, she manages to get past him. She's about to reach Bam, but the girl from the other testing area suddenly stops her, and while Kun is distracted by her, a man suddenly attacks him. Kun uses his bag to copy his knife and throws it towards the enemy, as Rak fights with another team. The girl who Ban thinks is Rachel stands beside him, and assures him they aren't planning on stealing the crown. He tries to confirm if she's Rachel, but her teammate steps in front of him. Rak wonders if Kun has bribed them, but he mentions they're from another testing area, so he didn't have time to do that. Rak headbutts his opponent, and tosses him into a wall, as Kun throws his knives up in the air to distract his opponent, and he uses this opportunity to land a finishing blow. Rak wonders why the other team is helping them, and Kun thinks they aren't going after the crown, so he thinks they've won the game. Bam asks the girl if she's Rachel, and he wonders why he should climb the tower if he's already found her. Warun continues fighting against the other girl, whose heel suddenly breaks, and Warren uses the chance to rush towards the throne. She gets past the others, and hits Rachel with her staff, which makes Bam leave the throne to help her. He throws himself in front of her, and he gets hit by Warren, causing him to bleed. He thinks about how he has disappointed Rak and Kun, but he has to protect Rachel. His body suddenly releases an enormous amount of energy, breaking Warren's mask, and he prepares to kill her. But time suddenly stops, as the spirit from the Black March appears, telling Bam he has lost control, so she kisses him, forcing him to fall asleep. Liro meets with Yuan, and reveals nobody won the game, because Ban Shinsu destroyed the crown. He asks Yuan why he came up with the crown game, so he reveals it was to help Quant, but Liro thinks he had another goal. He thinks the troublemaking trio was acting weird, because they didn't chase after the crown, and they even helped another team during the game. So Liro believes a member of their group had previously met one of the examinees, but the rules mention that acquaintances can't participate in the same test, so he wonders if Yuan's goal was to unite them. Yuan explains their job isn't only to determine people who are fit to climb the tower, but also to get rid of those who can harm it. Yuan asks him if there were any people like that in the test, which makes him think about Bam, but he tells him no. Before he leaves, he asks Yuan if he has ever seen someone who doesn't have a contract with an administrator, but can use Shinsu without any restraint. Yuan notes that it would be against the tower's law, but knows an irregular named Durek Mizuno, who was able to do it. Meanwhile, Bam still hasn't woken up, and Kun is taking care of him, but he's surprised when Rachel visits. She asks him not to tell Bam about her, because she thinks if they're together, they will become each other's weakness. After she leaves, Kun sees Rak trying to check up on Bam, but Rak says he doesn't care about him. On the other hand, Anik gets her hands on the Black March, but the spirit refuses to listen to her, saying she will only talk with a man. So Anik takes it to Lisu, and as he tries to touch the sword, he gets shocked, and the Black March says she'll only talk with someone handsome. As she leaves, the other girl named Endorsi wonders if she knows who the weapon belongs to, revealing that it's Yuri's. She mentions that out of all the princesses chosen during the past 5 years, Yuri is the only one who is granted one of the 13-month series. She calls Anik an imposter, so she becomes angry, and she tries to punch her, but she dodges it. Bam wakes up, and Kun tells him he's been asleep for 5 days, which makes him worried, but Kun says he got lucky. We see Liro explaining to everyone that the next test will begin after they select their positions, and he mentions how the battles fought in the tower are team battles, so their position means the role they take on during a battle. There are 5 basic positions, with the first one being the fisherman, who specializes in close-quarters combat. Next are the spear bearers, who fight from a distance, and the third position are the light bearers, who gather and distribute information. The fourth category are the scouts, who investigate the enemy's movement, and the final position are the wave controllers, who use Shinsu to control the battle. Liro explains that they will have to study the positions they're assigned to, and depending on their performance, they may be chosen to fulfill certain positions. Kun wonders what will happen to the people who got hurt, and Liro says it's their own fault for getting injured. But he reveals that Ban has been given the position of wave controller, and since their instructor Yuga is late, their training will begin after 2 days. Kun tells Bam his training will begin the next day, but he's more worried about Rachel. Kun tells him she's fine, but says she isn't the Rachel he's looking for. Kun thinks about how he doesn't want Bam to go through the same thing that he did, so he's determined to protect him, even if he needs to lie to him. Kun notes that if the girl is the Rachel he's looking for, it means she doesn't want to meet him yet, so the only option is to become stronger, so that he can climb the tower with her. Bam takes his class, where Yuga explains that Shinsu is a godlike substance capable of controlling all things, and to use more than a fixed amount, they need to form a contract on each floor. He mentions Lore has already formed a contract, whereas the rest of them haven't, so he asks them to make their pockets visible, and close their eyes. He tells them to command the pocket, and as Bam follows his instructions, he sees a giant monster asking him if he wants to form a contract. The monster accepts his request, but mentions that for Bam, it's a shackle rather than a contract. After the class ends, Bam apologizes to Warun for hurting her during the crown game, but she tells him not to apologize because he was also injured. Lore's teammate Ho introduces himself to Bam, and thinks they should help each other. Bam is amazed he isn't tired at all after making a contract, so Ho mentions he has been training, but when he gets to his room afterwards, we see that he's exhausted. Bam meets with Kun, and wonders where Rak is, so he reveals that Rak was outdone by another regular in the Spear Bearer test, which made him go into the wild to get stronger. Bam thinks he needs to get stronger too if he wants to have a proper talk with Rachel, when Lisu and Hots arrive with a request. They reveal that in a scout test, they're told to make 9 friends in 1 week. Kun isn't sure if he should help them, because they're friends with Anik, who stole the Black March. Hots notes they have cut ties with her, but Lisu mentions that she was the one who left them. Kun wonders why they would become friends with someone who can abandon an ally, which annoys Hots, and he starts making fun of Kun's earrings. Lisu tells him to stop, because he has caused many others to refuse to be their friends. They're about to fight, but Bam says they should become friends, because he was happy when Kun asked to become his ally during the first test, since he had nothing before that. They go to have lunch, and are noticed by Endorsi, who wonders what they're talking about. So Lee Soo tells her about their scout test, and Bam wonders if she would also like to become their friend. She says she would like to get close to Hots, but she can't, because love is forbidden in her family. They're interrupted by Onik, who calls Endorsi a princess of Zod, which shocks everyone. Onik notices Bam staring at the Black March, and she tells him she isn't going to return it, but Bam has no intention of taking it back. He wonders if this means Onik and Endorsi are Yuri's sisters, and Kun explains that the princesses are recruited to represent talented families, which means they aren't really sisters. A game is held for the next test, where everyone must knock each other off the platform using the needles they're given, until only 8 are left. Endorsi asks the administrator if there are any safety measures to break their fall. Raider says there are measures to prevent them from dying, which means they might still get injured. As the test begins, Onik immediately attacks Endorsi, but she knocks her back. She taunts her about how she could never be a match for a real princess, but Onik says there are no real princesses, saying they're all imposters. Meanwhile, Kun takes his light bearer class, where he digs up information about Rak, and sees that he passed his test. He doesn't find much information on Bam and Rachel, and looks up Onik. He sees that after becoming a ranker, she was selected as a princess of Zod, and was given her weapon the Green April, but he's shocked when the record shows that she should be dead. We return to the test, as Endorsi throws away her weapon, and keeps running from Onik, who knocks down the others, until only 9 people are left. She tells Onik to come back with the Green April, because she's no match without it. But Onik throws her needle in Endorsi, and she uses Shinsu to charge in, knocking her off her feet. She tries to follow up her attack, but Endorsi catches her foot, slanting her into the ground, and realizing that she's the child of the real Onik. We learn that the princesses are forbidden from bearing children once they are chosen by Zod, so that the power they have inherited doesn't spread. Endorsi mentions how Onik's mother committed a crime by having her and spreading the king's power. She doesn't agree with her, but Endorsi thinks she hasn't experienced any hardships, so she wouldn't understand. Onik becomes furious, and she tries to attack Endorsi, but she keeps dodging her attacks, as she mentions how Onik got her powers from her mother, while she had to work to become a princess. But Endorsi's heel suddenly breaks, and Onik uses this chance to knock her off the platform, but she grabs her hand, begging her not to let go. But Onik doesn't show mercy, pinching her hand, which forces her to let go, but she grabs her leg, and they both fall off. But we see that they were able to survive, and Endorsi wonders if Onik's mother ever regretted having her, but she believes she didn't. Meanwhile, Bam is in the middle of his Shinsu class, and all the students are trying to break the balloons. Ho is struggling to complete the task, but Yuga praises him, since he has been improving. Bam manages to break the balloons, and Yuga mentions that he still has a long way to go, but he's doing well. Bam thanks Lore for helping him complete the tasks, and Ho is curious about this. So Lore reveals that Bam helped him by getting him a new pillow, and he taught him a trick to break the balloons as a way of thanking him. Kun calls away Bam, and Ho mentions how it's not like Lore to help others. Kun tells Bam about the fight between Endorsi and Onik, and he calls them stupid, because they self-destructed even though they're blessed with great power. They're interrupted by Lee Soo, who mentions that the deadline of their task is today, but they haven't managed to make 9 friends. Bam wonders if they can do anything to help them, and Kun thinks it will be good for them if they fail, since they will have fewer enemies, but Bam wants to save his friends, so Kun decides to help them. Bam and Hots go to visit the injured Endorsi, who is starving, since she used all her points to treat her injuries. They offer to give her food if she becomes their friend, and even though she doesn't want to do this, she gives in to her hunger, and signs their form. They apply the same plan to Onik, and successfully complete their task. Lee Soo and Hots thank Bam for his help, but Kun wants them to thank him, since he was the one who came up with the plan. But Hots starts arguing with him, and Lee Soo thinks they should thank him, so Hots shows his appreciation. As everyone is having lunch together, Endorsi sees Rachel, and goes to the washroom to talk to her, asking her why she's pushing away Bam. She refuses to answer, but Endorsi wishes that whatever she's hoping to find at the top of the tower is worth more than Bam. During the wave controller class, Ho wonders if Bam is hiding something from him, but he's more worried about passing the tests. After failing in another time, he goes to his room, where he remembers his past, and starts crying, but he suddenly gets a letter, and is surprised when he reads it. On the other hand, Liro was shocked that Yuan has decided for the regulars to play a game of tag as a test for their positions, but they're interrupted by Quant. He apologizes to Liro, since he had to take care of 3 extra regulars because of him, and he proposes a joint test. Liro announces that the 28 regulars who haven't passed their tests will take part in the tag game, which makes Rack laugh, since he has already passed. He explains they will be divided into 2 teams, and their scores will be based on their individual performance. Yuan reveals that unlike a typical game of tag, there will be 1 person on each side chosen as the target. Each of them will wear a badge, and the test will take place in an enormous arena. To win the game, they have to make their selected person reach the goal, or steal the badge from the examiner chasing them. If they win by the first method, everyone on the team will get 100,000 points, but if they win by stealing the badge, they will get 200,000 points. But if they lose their own badge, then the team will be eliminated. We learn they are going up against Quant, and Kun becomes the leader of his team. He starts by putting Lisu out as bait, but Lisu thinks Quant won't fall for something so obvious. But Kun is sure that he will, because he's a sore loser. Quant arrives at the scene, but he mentions they haven't learned enough about being a light bearer. He notes that a lighthouse floats around using Shinsu, so if the light bearer operating it loses consciousness, the team will lose its eyes. He quickly knocks out one of the light bearers, which makes the lighthouse fall down, and he mentions that their other light bearer must be with their selected person. Quant approaches Lisu, but is surprised to see the other lighthouse above his head. Anik is standing above it, and she tries to attack him, but he grabs her weapon and pulls her down. Liro is watching the fight, and mentions how Quant gets angry, and has trouble holding back even against a weaker opponent. Liro notes that Quant can only use a limited amount of Shinsu in the arena, but he still thinks they won't be able to continue the test. Quant controls his anger, and praises their plan, asking them what they're going to do next. They all start running away from him, and he decides to give them a head start, and he also plans to use the stairs instead of the elevator. Liro is confused why Kun came up with such a simple plan when his opponent is a ranker, but Yuan thinks he has something up his sleeve. The other team is watching the match, and Endorsi asks Bam why he's nervous, so he tells her he can't see Rachel anywhere. Back in the match, Anik uses the elevator to go to the roof, and Lisu thinks they have already won the match, but Kun mentions that Quant wouldn't give them a head start without a plan. Quant finally starts moving, so Kun reminds his team that Anik needs 10 minutes to reach the goal, and since they already know he's going to take the stairs, they should at least stop him for 5 minutes. Quant appears in front of them and disappears, causing everyone to panic. He becomes visible, and the team tries to stop him by throwing spears at him, but he dodges their attacks, and starts defeating them one by one. One of them tries to use his strength to crush Quant, but he easily defeats him, saying that the ones who are overconfident in their strength will die first. Endorsi tells Ben to be happy the other team is losing, because if they win, he will fail his position test, but he's more concerned about whether Rachel will pass. Kun tells everyone that Quant has defeated the stair team, and will soon catch up to Anik, so Lisu thinks they should call Laura for help. But Kun reveals he is sleeping on the starting line, and he mentions that during his light bearer class, he found out that Laura is going to pass the test no matter what happens. Liro thinks they're about to lose the game, but Rack believes Kun has another plan, which makes Liro wonder if he copied the badge using his back. But Yuan says it's impossible, because he used Shinsu to prevent the badge from being copied or compressed. We return to the match, as Lisu meets up with his team, but Quant arrives with him, so Lisu tries to stop him, but he defeats them and reaches the bridge. He sees Kun and wonders where Anik is, so Kun tells him she jumped off the bridge to reach the exit. Quant doesn't believe him, because they're too high, and Kun teases him, saying he must be afraid to jump from this height. We see that a few moments ago, as Anik arrived at the bridge, Kun copied his lighthouse using his bag, and hid her below the bridge. Quant realizes what Kun has done, and mentions that even though he turned off the lighthouse's glow, he can still sense its Shinsu. Kun continues to deny this, so Quant grabs his hand, and makes him jump with him, thinking Kun might reveal where Anik is hidden. As they're falling, Kun separates himself from Quant, as Anik uses her weapon to catch him, and she manages to get to the bridge. Liro believes the test is over, because Quant doesn't have enough Shinsu to climb up the bridge, but he's approached by someone who offers to help him. Anik is about to reach the exit point, but is shocked when Quant appears in front of her and steals the badge. Kun takes the blame for the loss, but his team thinks his plan was amazing, and they think the other team won't come up with a better strategy. But we see that it was Kun and Lore who helped Quant get back up to the bridge, which makes Liro wonder why he betrayed his team, but Yuhan shows him the list of friends from the scout class, saying that they are his real team. He notes Kun's main goal was to show his friends how to pass, because they are the ones he wants to climb the tower with, but he believes Quant isn't going to make it easy for them. The next round is about to begin, and everyone is fighting to become the team leader, but they end up selecting Endorsi to lead them. She tells all the fishermen to move together, but two of the spear bearers are against this idea, and think they should be the ones to capture Quant. But Hots calls them idiots, and mentions that from seeing the other teams round, it's obvious they can't catch Quant, so this is the best plan to follow. The others don't agree with him, and they threaten him, telling him he's going to help them win this game, but he makes them apologize by taking their spears. Meanwhile, Ho's teammate Serena talks with him about how she doesn't think she can keep climbing the tower, because she can't bring herself to kill the friends she has made. She reveals she was a cat burglar, but she got on a boat where Rancor was present, and her friends were killed. She had lost all hope when Hedon appeared before her and took her to the tower. At first, she killed everyone she met, because she wanted to stay in the tower, but she feels different now, and Ho explains that everything they do is to climb the tower, so there are no hard feelings. On the other hand, Quant starts hunting them, but Endorsi suddenly starts attacking her teammates. She tells everyone about her past, when she lived in the home of fallen nobles. The family was the least significant of the 10 families, so to produce a Princess Azad, they adopted talented girls, and made them compete against each other. Their meals were determined by how they placed in training, with the higher ranks being served fancy dinners, while the lower ranks just received stale bread. Since Endorsi had to eat bread every day, she killed all her sisters, and she got to eat whatever she liked. Endorsi makes fun of them for believing her plan, which makes them realize that her goal is to get rid of all the other fishermen, so she can guarantee that she passes. She tells Bam this is what needs to be done to climb the tower, and if he's prepared to do this, he should meet with Rachel. On the other hand, Hot shares his plan of stopping Quant, so the 2 spear bearers can attack him from the shadows. Quant appears before them, so Hots tries to attack him, but he ends up losing one of his swords. Endorsi keeps beating her teammates, and Bam tries to convince her to stop, but she mentions they're competing against each other in the position test. She thinks they're weak, so they should just give up, but Bam reminds her that she was also weak, and she didn't give up, so she was able to get stronger. She keeps attacking the others, and Bam mentions his dislike for her actions, but she mentions she needs to do it to get everything she wants. As she argues with him, one of their teammates' swords starts to glow, and he uses it to try and blow her away, but Bam protects her. Hots keeps attacking Quant, who dodges his attacks, and he realizes that Quant can kill him any time he wants. He knows he has to do something while Quant isn't fighting him seriously, so he runs into the dark to try a surprise attack, but Quant grabs him and pushes him into the wall. Hots grabs his arms and tells the spear bearers it's their chance to attack, but we see them running away. They don't think Hots can stop a Rancor, but Quant catches up to them and tells them their deaths won't be pleasant because he hates people who are traitors. Ho meets with Rachel and suddenly holds a knife at her, revealing that the letter he received mentioned that Bam would go away if he got rid of her. Liro believes they need to do something to help her, but Yuhan says they can't stop the test no matter what. Meanwhile, Bam tells Endorsi he can't betray others to climb the tower, and he just wants to protect Rachel, but she says it's not what Rachel wants. He mentions he can't change how he feels, so he goes to find Rachel, but isn't able to connect to her. Ho mentions that seeing her lighthouse turn off, Bam will come looking for her, but he's shocked when Quant appears behind him. Bam also arrives, so Ho realizes the letter was a setup. He tells Bam to fight against Quant and show off his power, or else he will kill Rachel. Bam prepares to attack, but Quant quickly pours Shinsu into Bam's body, which makes him unable to move, and Quant tells him if he uses this technique on Ho, he will be able to save Rachel. Quant decides to leave, but Rachel suddenly tries to get away from Ho, and he ends up stabbing her. Bam quickly uses Quant's technique to stop Ho's movements, but it's too late, since the damage has already been done, and she passes out. Bam wonders why Ho would do this, so he notes that he will be able to climb the tower if Bam isn't there, but Bam says he considered him as a friend. So Ho starts crying, saying everyone important to him died before he came there, because he doesn't have power like Bam and Lore. He grabs onto the knife, and takes his own life, so Bam cries, but Quant tells him not to shed tears for a traitor. Dorsey arrives, saying she already expected this to happen, and Quant is surprised she came to capture him instead of going to the exit. She mentions she's already guaranteed to pass, so she wants to make things interesting, but Serena sees she's holding the sword of their teammate, so she slaps her. She calls her a traitor, asking her why she showed up, and Dorsey says they must participate until the test ends. Serena is about to slap her again, but she says that if they keep wasting time, then Rachel will die. Before she starts fighting Quant, she tells Bam that if he keeps passing the tests, he's going to experience more pain, but he has to keep moving forward, or else he will regret his decisions. She starts fighting Quant, and she attacks him using the power from the sword, but he dodges her attack. He tries to get close to her, but is stopped by Bam, who uses the technique he performed earlier, and he's impressed that Bam has already mastered it. The fight continues with Bam helping Dorsey, but Quant avoids all their attacks, and manages to take Dorsey's jacket, where she had hidden the badge. Dorsey leans her head on Quant, making him believe she has fallen for him, but she reveals the badge wasn't in the jacket, and she has also stolen his badge, leading to their team's victory. Rack tells everyone that Rachel's teammate disappeared while watching the tag match, and Dorsey mentions she doesn't know much about him, since he doesn't talk. She notes that when she found him, he was already with Rachel, and Kun tells her not to speak of Rachel in front of everyone. But she believes there's no point in hiding it anymore, since everyone knows Rachel is the girl that Bam has been looking for. We see that before the tag match, Kun found out that only 2 wave controllers are going to pass the test, and Lore is guaranteed a spot. He looks up the other candidates that could pose a threat to Bam, but Warren arrives, and tells Kun she's going to drop out. She warns him about Ho, saying he might lose his mind because of his hatred for Bam, so Kun acts on her advice, and we see that he was the one who gave Ho the letter. Rack starts banging on Kun's door, and as he opens it, he sees that Rack has shrunk in size. Rack reveals this was done by Yuan, because he was rude to him, and he asks Kun to use his bag to make him big again, but Kun says it's not possible. Rack plans on going to Bam, but Kun tells him not to, because Bam isn't going to the next level, since he has no reason left to climb. Bam comes to his room, and mentions that Rachel's stab wound was deeper than they thought, so she won't be able to walk anymore. But he says he will act as her legs, so that he can take her to the top of the tower, and he asks for their help. Everyone gathers at Ho's grave to give him a proper send-off, and Bam thanks Rachel for attending the funeral. She starts crying, saying she abandoned him because she thought he would get in her way of climbing the tower. She tells him to leave her behind, because she's of no use to him, but he says that even though he has made many friends, no one can replace her. At night, Lisu catches Serena trying to leave the tower, and she mentions she wants to give her life another try. She wants to find a reason why she survived, so she gives him her knife, and leaves the tower. Meanwhile, Yuan sees Yuga secretly talking to someone, and Yuan calls him Ren. He wonders how long Yuan has known about him, and he reveals the real Yuga is always 5 minutes early. Ren decides to fight him, and a large snake emerges from the ground, but as it tries to eat Yuan, a giant eel cuts off its head. Ren is happy he has someone to fight, because he was getting bored, but Yuan has no intention of fighting one of Zaat's rankers. He notes Ren's mission is to kill Onik and retrieve the Green April and Black March. He offers to help him complete his goal, because it's his duty to eliminate all threats to the Zaad family. Lero and Yuan announce the result of the position test, and Bam and his friends pass, but Lero mentions that Rachel has been disqualified due to her injuries. One of the regulars isn't satisfied with the results, and thinks he should have passed. So Yuan gives him a chance, and mentions that if he can endure this for 1 minute, he will pass the test. But he passes out from the pain. Yuhan is about to reveal the final test, but he's interrupted by Kun, who reveals that he's also not satisfied with the results. Yuhan is confused why he has a problem even though he passed, and Kun says he wants him to let Rachel participate in the final test. Yuan notes the rules forbid her from participating in her current condition, but Kun mentions that this rule is only for the tests run by them, saying he wants to take the administrator's test. Lero reveals they only have the power to run the tests, but all the tests and rules can be changed according to the administrator's will. Kun says he will take the test with Rachel's participation at stake, and Yuan warns him the test is difficult, so it will be better if he just takes the normal test. Yuan wonders how Kun knows about this test, and he reveals it's because he's a member of the Kun family. Yuan mentions that only an irregular can negotiate to take the test, so he tells Kun to return to his seat, but everyone is shocked when Bam reveals he's an irregular. Bam decides to take the test, so he goes to meet the administrator, as the others argue whether they should help him or not. Lero mentions if they decide to help him, they will get the quickest route to the top of the tower, but will also be known as an ally of an irregular. So Kun decides not to help him anymore, but Rat calls him a coward, and the others tell him to stop acting, because they know he's just trying to provoke them, so that they would help Bam, but they're already planning on helping him. Bam returns after meeting the administrator, and reveals he and Rachel have been given permission to take the test. Yuan mentions the final test will be an underwater hunt, where they will be hunted by net dolphins. He explains that the dolphins use shinsu to trap fish, so Bam's group will use a bubble made of shinsu to go underwater. To pass the test, they must be eaten along with the fish, and dropped down on the land by the Dolphin Queen. Li Su wonders what their role is in this test, and Yuan reveals that the barnacle goblins use giant worms to steal the fish gathered by the dolphins, so if Bam's group gets eaten by them, they will fail the test. He mentions that the enemy of the goblins and worms is the striped earth pig, and when the dolphins sense the pigs, they run away, so their job is to ensure the dolphins can hunt freely. He also mentions a monster called the bull, and says they should pray they don't run into it, because even rankers have trouble against it. Bam and Rachel enter the Shinsu bubble, and he says she doesn't need to worry, because Kun's group will take care of everything. Kun knows they can't use lighthouses to search underground, so their best option is to fortify the surface. He notes that Hot's group will watch the goblins' movements, as the spear bearers wait on the high ground for the worms to react. Lisa's group is supposed to watch out for the pigs, but he's left alone by his teammates. Kun wonders why Li Su is helping Bam, and he mentions that Serena said the reason Bam seems so bright is because he still has everything that was stolen from them before they entered the tower, so he doesn't want him to lose what he's got. Hots reports that one of the groups has vanished, and the bull suddenly appears in front of Li Su. In the bubble, Rachel wonders if Bam ever thought this would be his future, but he says that every time he thought of the future, it was being together with her. Meanwhile, the bull goes after the dolphins, so Li Su throws a rock to get its attention, but it ignores him. He takes out his knife and stabs the bull, so it becomes angry and it starts attacking him. It's about to eat him, but Anakin and Dorsey come to his rescue, so he thinks they came to save him, but they just want to fight the bull. It attacks them, but they jump away, and Endorsey kicks it to the ground. Anik tells her not to get in her way, and Endorsey proposes a bet where they fight it alone for 5 minutes at a time. If she beats the bull, she will get the 13-month series swords, but if Anik wins, she will become her servant for life. On the other hand, the worms start moving, and Kun tells everyone to wait for his instructions, because if they miss this chance, it will be over for them. The dolphin's net starts appearing around Bam and Rachel, and Kun is frustrated, since he can't see what's going on, but one of their teammates named Nair has an idea. Endorsey keeps attacking the bull, but it continues getting up, and it manages to catch her, but she frees herself from its grip. It runs into the dark, and Anik follows it, saying her 5 minutes are over, but Endorsey also follows them, because she thinks she still has time left. A divine sea fish flies across the land, and reveals an underground path, which makes Kun wonder why Nair didn't mention she's an anima who can control divine sea fish. She notes that the divine fish isn't capable of fighting, and can only detect surrounding areas with sonar, but Kun thinks this is still an amazing ability. He wonders if an anima can control other animals like the dolphins or the bull, and she mentions she isn't capable of this, but it might be possible for a ranker. In the Shinsu bubble, Bam reveals that when he faced the administrator, he was asked what he wanted when he reached the top of the tower. He mentions that the first thing that came to his mind was her face, and the second thing was all of them eating together and smiling, but before he could speak, the administrator disappeared. Meanwhile, Hots is noticed by Goblin, and their cover is blown, when it's killed by their teammate Pericule. Endorsey finds the bull, but is surprised by its movement, realizing it has gotten stronger. It catches her once again, but this time she isn't able to get away from it, and loses consciousness. Meanwhile, Anik runs into Ren, and is shocked when he shows her the necklace she gave to her mother. She tries to attack him, but he opens his mouth, releasing monsters which blow her away. She keeps trying to attack him, but he stabs her with his tongue, saying he's disappointed in her. She tries to get her weapon back, but Ren eats it, and mentions this would have never happened if she hadn't tried to get revenge. He's about to kill her, but decides to have fun, so he brings out the bull, which has Endorsey in its grasp. Anik realizes he's controlling it, and he reveals the underwater hunt was designed to take care of her. The bull lets go of Endorsey, and Ren gives her the green April, telling her to kill Anik, since she's Zod's enemy. Lisu keeps looking for Anakin and Dorsey, but he suddenly notices a strong presence, and Yuri appears behind him. Dorsey takes the green April, and she approaches Anik, but instead of killing her, she gives the weapon back to her. She takes the Black March from her, and they decide to fight together against Ren. Anik makes a tornado around her, allowing her sword to continuously attack, but Ren keeps dodging. Dorsey also attacks with the Black March, and when he tries to evade her attacks, Anik uses the green April to smash him into a rock. Dorsey thinks the fight is over, but Ren opens his mouth and blows her away with a lightning attack. He knocks Anik down, and while stepping on her, he mentions he's going to kill Dorsey as well. But Yuri and Lisu arrive to help them. Ren is confused why a princess is here. He's about to introduce himself, but she ignores him because she notices the Black March. Ren mentions he's there to retrieve the swords on orders from Zaad, but Yuri tells him to get lost. Ren mentions Zaad will be upset when he learns a princess defended an imposter, but this makes her angry because she thinks he's threatening her. The ground around her shatters, as she gives him one more chance to leave, or else she will kill him. But Ren gets excited, so he opens his mouth, attacking her with his monsters, but she instantly kills all of them. She gets close to him, and with a flick of a finger, destroys everything in front of her, but Ren manages to avoid her attack. In the Shinsu bubble, Bam and Rachel's hands start glowing, and he mentions that even though the light is pretty, it's still too bright. On the other hand, Rak gets tired of running away from the goblins, so he rushes towards them and jumps right onto one of the worms. Rak keeps blowing away the goblins, but there are too many of them, and Pericule thinks he's going to die. They all suddenly start flying, and Pericule wonders if this is due to him, but Hots tells him to look behind him, and he realizes that Lore has arrived to help them. Distract pigs start coming out of the worms' mouths, which surprises Pericule, but Nair mentions this is all part of Kuhn's plan. She reveals they found an underground tunnel, which the dolphins used to reach the water, and Kuhn realized the pigs must be using the same path. So he told Lore to destroy the passage, which ended up leading the pigs to the goblins. Meanwhile, Kuhn is approached by a family member, so he prepares to fight him, but the boy tells him not to bother, since he can't beat him. On the other hand, Lero and the others see an intruder has entered the testing area, but they don't know who it is. They try to find out who the person is, but the boy with Kuhn presses a button, which turns off their broadcast. Quant gets annoyed, but Yuhan reminds him this test is being held by the administrator, so they can't interfere. Kuhn wonders what a member of the family wants from him, and the boy mentions he can let him see Maria. Kuhn is confused why he would do this, and the boy notes it's fun to make the family angry, since he's also an outcast. He refuses the offer, because he isn't climbing the tower for Maria, so the boy wonders if he's trying to rise up in the family, but Kuhn mentions his goal is something bigger. The boy teases him, saying his goals are pretty big for someone scared to pull a knife on him, but when Hots comes to help, the boy realizes that he has good friends, and he decides to head back. Meanwhile, Evan and Yuri's other companion Kurudin try to reach her, but they're met by Yuhan. Evan realizes Ivankel isn't there, because he knows Yuhan wouldn't be able to continue this test if he were present, since an assassin of Zaad has entered the testing area. Yuan knows their goal is to retrieve the Black March, and he mentions that no matter what happens, he isn't going to let anyone find out about it, so Evan realizes Yuan let the assassin roam freely on purpose. Yuri keeps beating Rin, but Evan uses his pocket to communicate with her, and asks her not to help Anik, so Dorsey says they will get rid of him themselves. He notes that even though he's badly injured, they still aren't strong enough to beat him, and Dorsey tells him that if fighting for a friend is considered treason, she doesn't mind being a traitor. Yuri walks away from him, but tells Kurudin to get rid of Ren, so he comes from the ceiling and uses his hammer to pummel him into the ground. As he's about to die, Ren reveals he has already sent the bull after Bam and Rachel because he can't allow for an irregular to live. Yuri decides to destroy the test, but Yuan mentions that this will result in Bam's failure. She thinks it doesn't matter if he fails, but Onyx says that it's important for them because they will climb the tower together. Bam tries to attack the bull with Shinsu, but it keeps hitting them, and Bam gets injured. His Shinsu suddenly starts glowing, and he gets eaten by the bull, but he uses his powers to blow it to pieces, and falls back into the bubble. Yuri grabs the green April, and tells Onyx to get it back from her when she has learned how to use it properly. She also gives something to Lisu to deliver to Bam, telling him to tell Bam to go to the 77th floor. Bam tells Rachel he will take her to the top of the tower, but she suddenly pushes him out of the bubble. She thinks everything is finally over, but we see Heaton watching, and he notes that it's only the beginning. We see that when Rachel entered the tower, she also woke up in the same room as Bam, where she met Heaton. He reveals she wasn't the one the tower was calling, and she begs him to let her stay, since it's her dream to climb the tower, so he decides to give her the same test he gave Bam. She complains that it's unfair, because no one can pass this test, but Heaton tells her to be quiet and witness the birth of a savior. She's shocked to see Bam enter the tower, and wonders why Heaton is calling him the savior. Heaton hides her, so she can watch Bam take the first test, and afterward, he asks her if she understands why she wasn't chosen. He calls her weak, and she still wants to climb the tower to see the stars, but he mentions her real goal is to become a star. She begs him to give her a chance, so he tells her he will allow her to climb the tower if she kills Bam. He wonders why she's acting surprised, because she was the one who abandoned him, since she didn't need him anymore. She mentions Bam as the Black March, so she asks him to give her a weapon, but Heaton gives her a bodyguard. Every time she sees Bam fight, she wishes someone would kill him, because she could never bring herself to end his life. We see Yuan telling Warun to observe Bam, and check whether he's worthy, whereas Rachel is just a bait. Rachel knew she had to be the one to kill Bam, which is why she told Kun not to tell him about her, because she wanted to keep her distance, and wait for an opportunity to strike. As time continued to pass, she became scared of spending her points, because she thought if she couldn't kill Bam, she wouldn't be able to climb the tower with the points she had. Warun asks her if she has given up on climbing the tower, and she tells her it's still her goal, so Warun tells her to go along with the disturbance that's about to occur. She tells Rachel to create a situation that will allow her to stay close to Bam, but Rachel doesn't understand what she's trying to say, and Warun says she will know when the time comes. When Ho took her hostage, she realized this is what Warun meant, so she decided to let herself get stabbed. Everything went according to her plan, and she knew that eventually a chance to kill Bam would present itself. After Ho's funeral, she asked Bam to abandon her, so she wouldn't have to kill him, but he decided to stay with her. He called her the light in his life, but she thinks she has become so dark that his words don't have any effect on her. She became jealous, and started to hate him, because he had become friends with everyone. When Bam went to meet the administrator, Yuan told her it was her last chance to climb the tower. So when she was with Bam in the bubble, she knew something had to be done. As she spent more time with him, she realized he was the one who became a star, and that there's nothing special about her. Bam tells her he wants to climb the tower with her, but she knows if she stays with him, she will never become a star. Rachel is spit up on the ground by the Dolphin Queen, but everyone is surprised Bam is missing, so she says they were attacked by the bull, but she passes out. She wakes up in her room, and Warun congratulates her, since everything went according to plan. Meanwhile, Liro tells everyone they thoroughly examined the area, but couldn't find Bam's body, and he believes he might have been eaten by a fish. Pericule wonders what the test results are, but everyone tells him to shut up. Liro mentions they all pass, and they will contact them later to inform everyone about what will happen next. Liro meets Yuhan, and wonders what he did to Rachel, but Yuhan says she made her own decision. Hots thinks that they owe it to Bam, so they decide to climb the tower with Rachel, and take her to the top of the tower. On the other hand, Liro quits being a test administrator, and tells Quan he's being fired as well. He asks Quan if he wants to come with him, and reveals he will climb the tower to find the truth. Yuhan notes that everything has gone according to their plan, because all of Zod's people believe Bam is dead. But in reality, we see Warun going to see Bam, who is alive and protected by Shensu. He wakes up, wondering what happened to him and Rachel, but Warun reminds him she was the one who pushed him, and Warun tells him he has the potential to become the savior and god of the tower. She notes that if he wants to understand Rachel, he needs to reach the top of the tower, and she offers to train him. He thinks that the answers aren't at the top, but decides to climb the tower and search for the answers himself. But that's where this video ends.